Okay, gonna start. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm so excited to see you, so excited to be here. I look forward to this every single week. And I think it's such a beautiful way to start off your Monday morning learning about Eretz Israel. I think the more we learn about Eretz Israel, the more we love it. I know I love it even more every time I learn about it. So I'm excited to share this with you. Last week, we spoke about David Ben Gurion. This week, we're going to take a tour of his house in the desert. Now, the two classes aren't connected. If you didn't go to last week's, you don't need it for this one, but if you were there last week, then your knowledge will be enhanced. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I want you guys to take a look at the picture. This is the view that he saw from his home. We're going to get into it in a minute. Okay. In 1953, there was this 67-year-old man that was driving down south to Mitzpeh Ramon, the Ramon crater, which is all the way to the south of the country. And on his way back home to Tel Aviv, he noticed that there were these group of boys. They were carrying planks of wood. They had some tents set up. So he told his driver, he said, stop. His driver said, no, we can't just stop in the middle of nowhere. And we have meetings to get to in Tel Aviv. And the old man said, no, stop. I need to speak to these people. So the driver stopped the car. And the man asked this group of young men, who sent you here? Not, hi, how you doing? Who sent you here? And they said, we sent ourselves here. We fought in the Independence Day War. We fought in this land and we fell in love with it. And we decided that we want to start something new and want to live here. So the man says bye. He drives up back to Tel Aviv. That night, he can't sleep. And he wakes up in the middle of the night because he can't sleep. And he starts writing a letter to this group of people. And he says, I was never more jealous of anything in my entire life. I can't stop thinking about what you guys are doing, building a new town in the middle of the desert. Please, 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 can I join you? And the group of young men, they debate, should they let the man and his wife join? And then they decide that he could join. Now, the man that wrote this letter to them, the 67-year-old man that was never more jealous of anything in his entire life, was none other than David Ben Gurion, which is funny to think. David Ben Gurion did so much. He declared the state of Israel. He was the first minister of defense. He led the country. And this is what he's jealous of, people putting planks of wood in the desert. So why is he so jealous of this? So that's one of the things that a question we're going to keep in the back of our mind. Oh, wait, what just happened? Okay. And but I want to add a little bit to the story. So the group of people said that he can join, and 7 months later he packs up and he resigns, and he goes with his wife down south to the area. What it was called was Sde Boker. And the people in the streets, so you have some people that are crying because they're going to miss Ben Gurion so much. They love him as prime minister. And then you have other people that are thinking, like, what's wrong with him? Why is he going down? There's no roads paved. There's no lights. There's no security. But that's what he did. And he spent the last 20 years of his life there, not consistently, because the beginning 10 years, he became prime minister again. So he was back and forth to Tel Aviv. But that is where he spent the end of his life. And what we are going to focus on today is, one, we are going to explore the rooms and objects in his home to learn about his lifestyle. And two, as always, I'm going to give you ideas for new places to visit in Israel because I just love doing that. Okay. Where is his home? So we're going to start at Jerusalem because that's an area that everyone's familiar with. And if you drive 1 hour and 59 minutes down south, you will get to Ben Gurion's home, which is in Sde Boker. Now, why would you just be going there? Now, I really think it's fascinating enough that it's worth it to just go there, take a 2-hour drive and go there. However, there is a further destination that people are usually going to that you might be going to, and then when you're thinking of how to break up the drive, you'll say, oh, I know what we should do with the kids. We should go to Ben Gurion's home, and it's a very kid-friendly place. There's always tons of workshops and things for them to do. Where might you be going that you would decide to stop at Ben Gurion's home? So very, very popular in recent years is the Bereshit Hotel. So Ben Gurion's home is a 31-minute drive from the gorgeous Bereshit Hotel in Ramon crater. So if you were going there, you must stop at Ben Gurion's home. If you don't, you're really, really missing out. And I hope to prove that to you by the end of this Zoom that you must go. Okay. This is what it looked like. If you notice in the title, I didn't write house. They call it tzrif, which is translated as shack. And now I want to ask ourselves before we go in, what would we expect to find? Now let's take a step back from Prime Minister. Let's say you're going to anyone's home, a regular person, what would you find? You might find a bedroom, a bathroom. If we think of what's kitchen supplies, beds, books, maybe pictures on the wall. Like think of what you have in your house, what you choose to display to people. Now let's take it a step further. As Prime Minister, what would we expect to find? So maybe he has presents that people gave him, souvenirs, things from different places in the world. So let's see what he has in his home. Oh, I just want to add, I emphasized in the title his desert home. He does have another home when he was Prime Minister in Tel Aviv. And you can actually, when you go to Tel Aviv, if you're looking for something to do, also worth your while to go visit his house there. So we're going to start with the living room. Now, your first reaction when you see the living room might be, do you like it or not? Do you think he has good design taste? So that's a personal choice. You might notice that the living room, it all centers, his chairs in the middle, it all centers around the discussions that would take place. Now, for the last 20 years of his life, he was in his house, and people were constantly going to him for advice. Heads of state and people from different countries. So his family came to visit him, his children and his grandchildren. So any single person coming would see whatever he has out on display. So what kind of image does he want to give to them? What does he want to show them? The first thing that I notice is that there is a huge map over here on the wall, map of Israel, giant size. And the map is it's updated up until 1952. It shows the borders gained in Independence Day War. And the map also, it really emphasizes the Negev, the south, which is where Ben Gurion is living now. Something unique because this map is from then, there's no roads down south. Now we saw a few slides back, you take the highway down, you get there. There were no roads, so it was much harder to get there. And the fact that Ben Gurion chooses, here I'll show another angle of it, he chooses to proudly display a huge map of Israel, it shows what's important to him. Eretz Yisrael is important to him, and he wants to put a map on the wall. Now, if we look to the right of the map, here's a challenge. See if you look carefully, could you figure out whose face is that? Whose face is that does he have on the wall? Now, I'm going to zoom in to make it a little bit easier, but some of you might be able to figure it out just from that. So now here's my zoom in. Can anyone figure out who that is? Who is hanging on Ben Gurion's wall? None other than Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. And Ben Gurion has him on his wall. Now, I find this impressive for two reasons. One, it shows that he didn't only know Israeli history, he knew history of the whole world because he was familiar with American history enough that he wanted Abraham Lincoln on his wall. Just to give you dates-wise, so Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. Ben Gurion was born in 1886. So he wasn't alive when he was alive, but he learned enough about him, which is also impressive because how much do we know about the presidents that came 20 years before us? How much do we know about the president we're living with? And Ben Gurion, one of the things he admired about him was what Abraham Lincoln is credited with. He freed the slaves, he brought freedom to people, and Ben Gurion really admired that. And he said, I want a picture of this man on my wall. So really, really interesting. He has a picture of Abraham Lincoln right next to the map of Israel. Okay. Now I want to, again, go back to the living room. So something I just thought of now, the chairs, I said, notice how they're all facing towards the middle. And we have a TV. They're not even facing towards the TV. Usually if you think of the den in your house, you have the couches set up so you could watch TV. So what does that say about his TV if the chairs are not even a good angle to watch the TV? And why does he even have a TV in his house? So this TV was given him as a gift. Now, Ben Gurion, he did not like TV, and he actually really, really tried hard not to let them into the country of Israel. Why? He said, television is going to corrupt the youth. Do not let them in. It's not a good idea. And then he gets a gift by Zenith Electrical Company. They give him a TV. Now, he's polite, so he puts it in his house. And according to stories, he never ever used it. He tried once to turn it on to see an interview that he gave, and I don't even know if it worked. And Ben Gurion was the kind of person that said, why would someone even go to a coffee shop? What, you're going to sit and drink coffee and do what? So a person who can't imagine what you're doing there is not a person that's going to watch TV. But he was polite. He kept it in his house. So he had a TV in his house that he never really watched. Okay. Now I zoomed in to more things. So you see that he has all these like little carved items. So almost everything here was a gift that was given to him from different people from different parts of the world or places that he visited. So we're not going to go over all those gifts, because if you want to, you need to go to Steboked to see it for yourself and hear what all these things are. But another thing that I do want to comment on, and this is going to be the last item in the living room, is if you look at the lamp over here, what is hanging out of the lamp? How strange for this to be in his house. So there's a koala bear. Now, we don't know for certain what he's doing there, but the theory is his grandchildren, he had 7 grandchildren. They came over one day, they played with the koala bear, they left it there, and he stuck it on the lamp. So that's what it's doing there. Now, Ben Gurion, when he died, one of the things he wrote in his will is that he wants his house to be available to the public. And so this is really what it would look like, and this is what he wanted. So it's not like we're intruding into his house. He wanted us to be there and to see what he had. Okay. The next room we are going to visit is the kitchen. Now, the first thing that I think about when I see this is I'm like, wow, what a small kitchen. And in Israel, so the oven I have in my kitchen is pretty small. And every time I go into people's kitchens, like especially in America, I'm like, wow, your oven is so big and you have 2 of them. So everything in Israel is just smaller. But then when I look at this oven, it makes me feel better because this is tiny and there's not a lot of counter space. But even stranger of the fact that the kitchen is so small is the fact that there's a kitchen at all. Because living in Steboked, and when people lived in kibbutzim in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, there wasn't a private kitchen. You had the public kitchen. You'd go and have your meals together. So if the new founded Steboked, what are they doing in the personal kitchen? Well, that was because of his wife, Paula, because she said, I don't trust the kitchen. I need to make sure my husband is eating right. He's eating healthy. I want my own kitchen. I want my own food. So she had her own kitchen. Now, one of the things you notice, if you look at the table, you see a blender. And if you look on the right, on the wall, there's something written. What's written? I'm going to zoom in so you could see. This is a recipe for something known as kuchmuch. What is kuchmuch? So I am going to zoom in a little bit and show you the recipe, and I translated it. There are 3 ingredients in kuchmuch: raspberry syrup, applesauce, and a little bit of cheese. Twice a day, Paula would take these ingredients, blend them together, give it to Ben Gurion to drink. Now, do you think this sounds appetizing? Raspberry syrup, applesauce, and cheese? To me, it does not really sound appetizing, and to Ben Gurion, it wasn't either. He actually hated it. He said it was awful tasting, but his wife said, it's healthy, you need to drink it, and he drank it no matter what. Whether he was talking to people dealing with issues of war, whether he was sitting and relaxing and reading a book, he drank it twice a day. Now, his wife, Paula, died before him, and after she died, one day his son Amos is in the house visiting, and he sees that his father is drinking kuchmuch. So he says, Dad, why are you drinking this? Don't you hate it? He says, yeah, I do hate it, but it reminds me of your mother, and I love her and I miss her. So he drank it after she passed away from time to time. So that is the kitchen. The next room that I'd like to take you to is Paula's bedroom. Paula is David Ben Gurion's wife. They were married for 50 years. Now, the first thing that you might think of is, what do you mean Paula's bedroom? Didn't they share a bedroom? What does it say about their marriage? They have 2 separate bedrooms. So I have a few answers to that. The first answer is, back then, it wasn't really so rare for couples to be in 2 different rooms. That's one. 2, Ben Gurion slept about 3 to 4 hours at night. We're going to see when we look at his room how many books he had by his bed. He spent the whole night reading. So how fun is it to sleep next to someone? Shut the light, shut the light, shut the light. Like, he's just always reading. So that was another reason that it was better that they had separate rooms. And the third reason is because there's no guest room, and he's living in Steboked, which we saw how far it is. It's a 2-hour drive away from Jerusalem. There's no roads back then, and he was constantly getting visited by people. Now, let's say people need somewhere to stay. Well, there's nowhere for them to stay. So sometimes they would use Paula's bedroom as the guest room, and she would go sleep by a friend in the kibbutz. So that is another reason why they're separate. Now, if we look at her bedroom, we notice a few things. One, if we look over here to the left, there's pictures. Her room is the friendliest room of the house. Just pictures here of her grandchildren. Now I'm going to zoom in again. Behind her bed, there's a picture, a really, really beautiful picture of her husband kissing one of his grandchildren. This is a different side to Ben Gurion. I'm sorry about this yellow line. when I share my screen, I don't know how it happens exactly, but you guys have control to like write on it. I don't know how to erase it or something. If anyone knows how to erase it, feel free to erase this yellow line, but I don't know how to get rid of it. So here's Ben Gurion kissing his granddaughter. And I want to comment a little bit on their marriage. Now, Ben Gurion was never home. He was always out, and he was very, very poor because no one really had money then. And a lot of times Paula had nothing to eat, and the kids didn't have food to eat, and he never really knew the financial state of his house. And he was always leaving her to go on trips. And she was such a supportive wife. She always stayed by his side. She came to him. She came down south. There was nothing there. She was a woman. She was American. She was born in New York. She knew luxury of New York. And when they got married, he said, one of the conditions is we need to move to Israel. And she agreed. And they lived in Tel Aviv. And she was a woman who liked culture, liked friends. And then she followed him down south and had to start over again. But she believed so much in what her husband was doing and that he was a leader and how amazing he was, that she said, if this is what my husband needs to do, what we need to do, then I'm going to follow him down south. The kids never actually lived there. They were grown by then. And he talks about how much he loved his wife and that I didn't deserve her and there was no one that loved me as much. She gave a new definition to love. So don't get too upset by the fact that they have 2 bedrooms. He really, really, really did love her. Next room I want to focus on is his room, Ben Gurion's bedroom. Okay, so we notice the books by his bed. He has about 40 books over there. He was constantly reading. His slippers, like literally you would think like he was just there yesterday. You see his slippers on the rug by his bed. This is one angle. Notice that there's no pictures on the wall. The walls are very, very bare. The room extends out a little bit. So here's another angle. We see that he has a safe. What does he have such a big, huge safe? What is he hiding? Well, he had classified documents because people were still discussing things, matters of war, army, what should we do? So he had a safe where he would lock up the documents. And now here's his closet. So now the clothes in the closet are actually his clothes. They were preserved. Now he doesn't have a lot in his closet. He had like army suits, khakis, which is really through all the time, and he had fancy suits, but he would wear casual clothes as much as he could. Now, another thing I want to point out, so if you notice over here, there's this, like to the left, so I covered it. There's one picture in his room. So we said previously that his walls are pretty bare. There was one picture in his entire room, and it's also going to surprise you of who it was. It wasn't Abraham Lincoln. It surprises me every time I see it. It wasn't his wife, it wasn't his grandchildren. The one picture that Ben Gurion had on his wall in his room was a picture, closet, okay, was a picture of Gandhi. Ben Gurion really, really respected leaders, and he respected Gandhi's non-violence approach. Now, also in terms of years, to give you some context, so Gandhi was born about 17 years before Ben Gurion, and he died in 1948. And he looked up to the way that he dealt with things. Now, Ben Gurion didn't really take a no-violence policy. He was the one guiding the independence war. And, sometimes you need to do that. If your enemies are coming to you with a gun, you need to shoot back. But as an ideal, he really, really recognized that and appreciated that as something valuable. So we had a picture of him on his wall. I'm going back because I don't know if you noticed how high the windows are in his house. Look at where the chair is and look at how high the windows are. Now, if I think of my house or think of your houses, you sit down on the couch, you sit down on your bed, you could see out the window, you could see what's going on. You don't have to stand up and crane your head to see, but his windows are really, really high. And now it's something I want you to notice in all the pictures, even in Paula's bedroom, living room, the windows are really, really, really high. Why? Well, originally it wasn't like that, but then the security recommended that they make them higher because they said if, God forbid, someone wants to come and assassinate him and he's sitting down on a chair, it's very easy to shoot through the window. But the windows are high, they can't get them so easily. So for security purposes, the windows weren't moved higher up. Now I would like to move to Ben Gurion's, probably his favorite room of the house, his library. The library has about 5,000 books in 9 languages. Ben Gurion loved to read, and he loved reading things in the original language. He said, if I want to read philosophy, I'm going to read it in Hebrew, I'm going to read it in English, I'm going to read it in Greek, obviously. And he taught himself languages in order to understand books. It reminds me of when Harry Potter was coming out years ago. I remember seeing online how you know if you're a true Harry Potter fan. And one of the things I had listed was, if you learn English as a second language, so you could read the book before it's translated, because lucky us, we speak English. So I still remember when the postman comes to the door, like you're so excited, you get the Harry Potter, but let's say you don't speak English, you have to wait another few months for it to be translated. So apparently there's people that actually learned English, so they wouldn't have to wait. So Ben Gurion felt that way about books. They need to be read in the original language. Some of the things he had on his desk. So of course he has a Tanakh. He also had a Tanakh by his bed, because what's a desk without a Tanakh? It's the most basic book there is. Also, if it says Pesukei Tanakh B'Nosei HaMidbar, he had this piece of paper, which had different Pesukim that spoke about the desert. Now, if we open up, all these happen to come from Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu is constantly giving nevuot. We'll read just the first one. Yisusu Midbar V'Tziyah is actually a song. V'Tagel Aravav Tivrach Kecha B'Tzedet, talking about how the desert is going to bloom. And one of the things we said we're going to keep in the back of our mind is why Ben Gurion come all the way down south to the desert. There was nothing. Why was he so jealous? Why did he want to come here? And one of the things that Ben Gurion was famous for saying, I thought I put it here. Hold on, let me see. Oh, I did. Okay. He said, "Banegev yivachen ha'am v'Yisrael." The nation in Israel will be tested by the desert. He said the true test of the Jewish nation to see if they're strong and able to survive is to have everyone come and live in the desert. Why? Because the desert is very, very hard conditions. There's no water, there's no trees, there's nothing. But if the nation of Israel could find a way to make the desert a valuable living, then they'll be able to do anything. And something really admirable about him is he wasn't a leader that said, yeah, go live in the desert, go live here, go do that. He said, if I'm telling you to do something, I'm going to do it myself first. So he said, if I believe people should live in the desert, then I'm going to go live in the desert. And he led by example. And we're going to see later on that his grave is in the desert, because that's one of the things that people that are down south, like if they want to go visit his grave, they have to go all the way down to the desert. And if you at the desert, well, one, you see that gorgeous view I showed on the first slide, which is literally the view from his grave. I was by his grave a few times and I took the picture, so it's actually there. And then you see the desert, and then you start thinking, why is it all the way here? And then you go through this whole thing, and it constantly, the values that he believed in, you keep being reminded of when you go visit his grave down south. His grave is frequented by a lot of people. I always see soldiers there. Also, I have, as a tour guide, I've taken birthright groups a few times, and on the itinerary has always been Gurion's grave, because we also spend time in the desert. So for there, can we not go there? And he's the leader of Israel. So he believed that the desert is where the future is, and he wanted 5 million Jews to live in the desert. We are far away from that. So if anyone wants to be a part of his dream, you're more than welcome to settle in the desert. Few other things I want to point out in the library. Behind him are two statues. One is this Greek philosopher named Zeno. Another one is here, the little tiny one, is the Buddha. What is that doing there? He was Jewish. However, Ben Gurion had respect for many religions, especially for Buddhism. He said that he spent time meditating on his trips. He respected it a lot, and he believed that there was truth that could also be found there. And he had these statues on his shelf. Now, these statues originally were on the highest shelf, but not behind him, in front of him. Like when he's sitting, he looks up, he sees these two statues because he really respected these people. But then he got a statue as a gift that he liked even more. And he said, this statue of this person, he is way more important. This man that I'm going to show you in the next slide, to Ben Gurion, we said he respected Gandhi, he respected Abraham Lincoln, but the man of the statue that he has on his top shelf, which he moved these two down to put, is the leader he respected more than anyone else. He thought he is the ultimate leader of all time. And this was no other than, so there's the statue. It's like a weird angle a little bit, but his desk is facing the statue. This is none other than Moshe Rabenu. This is a famous Michelangelo statue of Moshe Rabenu. So this is a copy of it. It's a little bit hard to see the face, and like the lighting isn't so great, but believe me that it's Moshe. And he thought Moshe should get the seat of honor, so he put him on his top shelf. When he would look up, he would look at Moshe Rabenu. And saying this now, it makes me think of the area where I do my work, or I do my preparation, studying, reading, whatever. When I look up, what do I see on the walls? And this is what he chose. He says, I want to be inspired every time I look up. I want to see Moshe Rabenu. So that is another cool thing about his library. And here is an actual picture of Ben Gurion. We see the two statues that we mentioned before behind him. He's reading a newspaper. He's very up on current events all the time. I see that he didn't really keep his desk, so neat. If you look closely, you could add it, maybe you can make out what this is a little bit. This looks to me like letters, which is really a very good guess, because now what I want to share with you is some of the letters, some of the fan mail Ben Gurion would get, and this is so much fun to read. It really, he would get letters. Okay, he's an important leader, so he would get letters from heads of state and leaders of different countries asking his advice, asking different things, sharing with him. And the people really felt that he was from them and he could relate to their problems, and they didn't feel like, oh, I can't write to him about what's going on. Like, I'm thinking today, let's say someone has, I don't know, a problem in their neighborhood. Are they gonna write a letter to Bibi if you live in Israel, or to Trump? I have a problem in my neighborhood, could you help? They're gonna say, no, he's gonna deal with that. One, he's not even gonna read the letter. Two, he's the president, he's not gonna sit and deal with my little issues. But people felt comfortable to write their personal issues to Ben Gurion, which meant that he would respond to them, and he was really, they felt close to him. So specifically, he didn't answer all the letters, but letters which he did love to answer was anytime he got letters from children. So I'm going to share it to them with you. So they wrote in Hebrew, but we are going to read it in English. Okay, so letters from children. Okay, it's really so fun to read. So, dear Mr. Ben Gurion, I hope that you still remember yours truly. I just want to tell you about my concerns and ask for advice. I am a city girl and I know dozens of young boys and girls like me. I presume that you've heard about the saloon society that only cares about silly games and dances. And why? Perhaps because the youth movement is no longer appealing. Youth only cares about money and appearance and cannot care less about ideals. They think the kibbutz people are lunatics. I keep wondering and ask myself, should I join a settlement? And I can't find an answer since I do not know. I'm not that confident. Is it the right thing for me? So this is the man who was the former prime minister. This is what you're sharing with him. I keep thinking about my call in life. If I join a settlement, will that improve the situation? And how about the youth? Is there a solution? So she's focusing on two things in her letter. One is, what should I do with my future? And two, she's upset about the youth. She thinks they're wasting their time. What are they doing? Where's their sense of, where are their ideals? So she's writing to him, and his answer is really great. So he writes back, hello, Noah. Don't complain about the youth so much. You believe the youth have a pioneering role, which is joining a settlement, so act upon it. And the results, one, youth would be rescued. Two, actions affect others. If you do it, others will follow you. Don't spend your time on preaching, but on actions. So he reads her letter and says, he says to himself, you're complaining so much about the youth, and you want to know how to fix things. So fix things. Take action yourself. Stop worrying about everyone else. Do something. You want to make a change? Make a change. So I wonder what her reaction was when she got the letter, but I really love the approach, because I think in life, we really, myself included, I know I do this, we spend time, these people do this, and the government doesn't take care of that, and how are we going to do this, and how are we going to do that? And he's like, stop complaining. You want to do something about it. And that's how you make change. You do something. So this is an example of one letter that he had. Another letter which I want to share. So I included the Hebrew and the English. Now, there are some things that are missing in the introduction. We'll read the letter and then I'll say what's missing. Really, really by chance. Wait, I'm going to go back because I don't want to read it without it. I was so Ben Gurion's house, it has this Facebook page, and I was on the Facebook page last week, and then it said, letters to Ben Gurion, Thursday at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom, and it was Thursday, and I was like, wow, they're going to give a whole lecture now about letters, and I'm going to talk about that. So I joined onto the Zoom, and the next letter they read, but it was longer, and I'm going to tell you why that was significant in a minute, because when you see his response to the next letter, it might be a little bit jarring, but if you had the full letter, you would understand maybe more why he answered that way. So let's read it. I'm going to read it in English. If you want to read in Hebrew, you can. So he's writing to the Prime Minister. Hello to David Ben Gurion. Dear David, I come from a family in Neve Oz. Neve Oz is a farming workers neighborhood near Petach Tikva. My age is 11 and I study in 6th grade. I read about you in the newspapers and I heard on the radio that you and your wife have moved from Tel Aviv to Sde Boker. So I decided to send you a letter and I thought you will answer me. What time do you wake up? How many hours do you work? What is your work? Where is it better, in the city or here in Sde Boker? How many letters do you get every day? Do you still have private property such as a taxi? When it says taxi here, it was a company. It means a car. Radio? If you can please answer my questions. So here in English it says, I do not recommend you. And in Hebrew, ani lo mamlitz alayich. I think what he meant to say is, I don't like expect it. I know you get many letters every day. Goodbye, my address. Okay. So this is the letter. Now, what's his end? Oh, okay. So I want to tell you the things that weren't in the letter. So he spends, in the original letter, the boy spends a lot of time saying, I go to school. School is 8 hours a day. I learn 4 hours a day. Like, he's very mathematical about what he does, how many hours, the things that he does, talking a lot about himself. Okay. Here's the answer. It's a little shocking, the answer. Wait. Okay. Hello to David Gedaliahu. There are many mistakes in your letter and you must work. You know what? I don't really like the translations even so much, but okay. There are many mistakes in your letter and you must work on them. We wake up before 7, we eat and we go to work. Everybody works at least 8 hours a day. I only work 4. We work at the field or the pen. We take care of the flock or the sheep. I have a radio, but I don't have a car. If it wasn't good at Sde Boker, I wouldn't have come here. It's good here because it's a desert wilderness and we need to start from scratch and create something from anew. In the meantime, this should be enough. And until you improve your Hebrew, don't ask me any more questions. So from his answer, we learned a few things. One, that Ben Gurion had a very high value for the Hebrew language. He spoke fluent Hebrew. He grew up in Poland. His grandpa taught him Hebrew when he was 14. He started this youth movement, this youth movement, where they would try to teach the. 1 second, I need to wait. Where's my water? He started this group of young boys where he would try to teach them Hebrew. And when he eventually moved to Israel, part of how he got to his role eventually prime minister and like part of the organizations was because he spoke such great Hebrew. And foundation of language, of speaking, is to have command of the language. So he tells them, need to improve your Hebrew. So that's one. Maybe it's a little bit harsh. The boy is probably so excited he's writing prime minister, and then he tells him, don't write me until you improve your Hebrew. But okay, so one, he valued the Hebrew language. 2, he was super honest. He said what he thought. He didn't hold it back. Wasn't trying to say it in a nice way. Just said, fix your Hebrew or don't write to me anymore. And he answered his questions. Now, he could just read this letter and, okay, next. And he really took the time out to sit and answer this boy's questions. And this is what I do. And this is how many hours I work. And I love it here. I know if I wrote to the prime minister and I got a letter and one written by him and one that really answered what I wrote, I would be very happy. So this is an example of another letter that Ben Gurion writes to him. Other letters which I didn't include here, but I just know about from the Zoom lecture I went to, is there's someone that writes to him about, I want to join the army, but I'm reconsidering because there was a lot of racism in the beginning of the country between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, that the Sephardim, they were not treated properly and they faced a lot of discrimination. So this boy writes, I faced a lot of discrimination. And then Ben Gurion, he said, he wrote to him a 4-page letter. Could you imagine he handwrites a 4-page letter? And one of the things he says to him is, in the army, these differences, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. It's a shame. And in the army, people are really united based around the common goals. And I hope that you don't face this in the army, because like differences are less pronounced between people. And whatever people wrote him, he tried to write back to him. And it's a really fun thing. Like, I should do this on my free time, like just to read the letters that he wrote to people. And it gives you a light into who he was as a person, what was important to him. I guess if there's a message from this letter, one is that we need to improve our Hebrew. I need to improve my Hebrew. Okay. Other fun things I just want to share with you. Here we have a picture of David Ben Gurion getting a haircut, and he's getting a haircut from the sheep shearer. Paula is beside him supervising. I really like this picture. If you go visit David Ben Gurion's house, so not in the actual house, but there's a few buildings, and like you go into one building, you see all pictures. The specific picture is outside, so there's a lot of cute things you could see. Here are the graves of Ben Gurion and Paula, and you see the gorgeous, gorgeous mountain in the background. There's also always ibexes there. So if you wanna see ibexes, you could also go to the graves. The graves are very, very simple. Ben Gurion's grave, it had 3 dates on it: the date he was born, the date he died, and the date he made Aliyah to Israel, because that was very, very important to him in his life. His wife died before him. He was heartbroken when she died. And one of the things he wrote about her, which I'm gonna quote for you, he said, so this pasuk they see over here is pasuk from Yirmiyahu. It says, "Zacharti lach chesed ne'urayich, ahavat kelulotayich lechtech acharei b'midbar be'eretz lo zirua." That Hakadosh Baruch Hu is speaking to Am Yisrael, and he says, Bnei Yisrael, I remember the chesed that you did, that you came after me in the desert. Well, God saved us from Egypt, and then we came after him. You came after me in the desert to a land that had nothing. And Ben Gurion takes this pasuk and he says, well, this applies to my wife. She did chesed. She came after me. Exactly, she did this to the desert, to a land that had nothing. And he really, really appreciates what she did for him. To summarize, so we started out with the story of this old man that on his way back to Tel Aviv, he sees people with planks of woods, and how he was so jealous and he wanted to move there. Then we next we saw his living room. Some of the things we noticed: map of Israel, picture of Abraham Lincoln, the television, and the koala bear. Then we entered his kitchen, where we saw the recipe for kuchmuch that he would drink twice a day, even though he hated it. We saw Paula's bedroom, which was a friendly bedroom with pictures of her grandchildren, which sometimes also served as the guest room when she'd go sit by a friend. We saw Ben Gurion's bedroom, the books that he had by his bed, his closet with a few clothes, the safe for important documents, picture of Gandhi that he had, which was the only picture in his room. And we also commented there on the windows in his house, which were higher because of security. We entered his library, where we saw 5,000 books on the shelves, statues of Zeno, Buddha, and Moses, which he put to the top shelf and put the other ones lower and behind him, because Moses was the ultimate leader for him. Pesukim about the desert, which he had on his desk, which re-emphasized him every day the importance of what he was doing. And we ended with letters that he wrote to children, what they wrote to him, the responses. And we see to the right a picture of him with children. He loved children. He loved spending time with them. And it's, I think, an encounter with a person like him, or really, I think any encounter a child has with an adult, if the adult gives them the time of day and really looks at them and shows that they're important, it really has a lasting impression forever, I think, on the child. The official website of Ben Gurion's house, and where I got all the pictures from, so you saw that they were good pictures and they had already had like these outlines. So if you go on the website bengurion.co.il, it's his house, his house's website, and they want to share music of Ben Gurion, so they made it very, very accessible. If you're interested in any of the objects that I didn't show you about, if you go onto the website, you could read about them, or even more, go to his house, you could actually see them, which is even better. And the website, some of the things, if you go to his house, Ben Gurion's desert home, and you go visit it on the way down south, or even if that's your destination that you're on the way to. So we only went to his house, but there are other rooms where I mentioned they have different pictures of him, and they have also these really, really, really fun activities on the computer where they ask you questions about Israel, and like it's like a race. Plus they have all kinds of fun activities for kids. So do not think for a second, oh, I'm going to take my kids, they're going to be bored in 2 seconds. First of all, they will be bored because it's so much fun. I mean, I'm not taking a survey now if you guys are bored enough, but I'm going to assume that everyone is very interested. So your kids will be interested too. Plus they have specific activities for kids. You could see kind of even in the background here, people's legs in the air, and the statue has legs in his air. The last Zoom I gave, if anyone is interested in learning more about Ben Gurion, other than Google, if you type my name in YouTube, it's not posted yet, but when it's posted, I gave a class about him. And Ben Gurion, he would stand on his head. He learned when he was 69 years old how to stand on his head. And here we see in the background, people are copying him and standing on his head. He learned because one, for health reasons, that a doctor told him it might help him because he was a sickly man. And 2, the story goes that they asked Ben Gurion, is there anything you don't know how to do? He said, yes, stand on my head. So they said, okay, so learn it. That's another version I heard. So it's really, really, really a great place, Ben Gurion's house, to go and visit. I hope you all go visit. And to remind you again how you get there, you from Jerusalem, you drive south 2 hours, and then it's on the way to the Bereshit Hotel. So that's first thing I want you guys to do. 2 more things that I have for you. So this is the gorgeous, gorgeous view you see right by his grave in the area of Sde Boked. I want to leave you with 2 questions to think about. 1, what do the objects in your home say about you? So we spent time going through his house, going through his living room, his bedroom, his kitchen, the things that he chose to display on his wall, on his dressers. What does it say about him, about the kind of life he led, about what's important to him, about what he wanted people to see? When they came to his house, what do you want people to know? And the second thing is, will you be a part of Ben Gurion's dream to help the Negev blossom? So his dream of 5 million people, it still has what to be achieved. We achieved it partially. The fact that we've been talking about it is a step in the right direction, and there's definitely amazing things that create in the desert, but there's definitely more to be achieved. And if you would like to help his dream, one, just visiting already helps. If you want to live there, I'm sure that helps even more. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. I enjoyed speaking about him. I think he's fascinating, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Oh, you're welcome. So glad you enjoyed. Thank you.
So much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Ralph.
Thanks, Adele.
My pleasure. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.